It happens quietly, right around the time when you begin planning for the new year. You start feeling that familiar weight settle in on your shoulders, the weight of spiritual expectations that you never agreed to and somehow absorbed anyway. Not because you don't love God, not because your faith is weak, but because you spent years being told, either directly or indirectly, that a good Christian woman looks a certain way. And that mold is relentless. She's the woman who never misses a Sunday, volunteers regularly, attends all those weekly studies, shows up for every church event, disciples other women, hosts gatherings, serves on those committees, manages her home with grace, prays for everyone, supports her family, keeps her life emotionally stable, and does all of this with a cheerful heart and signs that she has no fatigue. That mold has been handed down for generations, and yet your real life, my real life, doesn't look like that anymore. You're leading teams, you're running a business, you're managing responsibilities, you're supporting aging parents, you're navigating stress and deadlines and decision fatigue, trying to take care of yourself and your health and your family and your work, and still those expectations, they whisper, you should be doing more. You should be more involved. You should be more consistent. You should have more capacity. You should keep up. Ooh, it's an unspoken pressure chamber, one that squeezes women into a version of spirituality that no longer fits the reality of their lives in the way that God designed them. So instead of feeling free in Christ, you feel guilty for needing a faith rhythm that actually reflects your world. You feel exhausted, not because you're failing, but because you're carrying a mold that you were never meant to fill. Feeling spiritually exhausted is not a sign of spiritual weakness. It's a sign that the mold doesn't match the woman God's growing today. Hey there, wise woman. This is Deneen TB, your faith growth and work alignment strategist, helping driven Christian women, professionals, and business owners design a faith growth rhythm and practices that actually fit their lives without the pressure of doing more, so they can lead with purpose, live out their mission, and create lasting influence for God in work and life. So glad you're here. Let's begin with why we get trapped in these expectations, even if they don't fit us. If you've ever wondered why you keep trying to squeeze yourself into that faith mold that no longer fits, you're not the only one. You're not imagining that you're trying to do that, because everyone is doing it. There are real historical, cultural, and emotional forces that shaped the spiritual shoulds that women carry. And most of us adopted them long before we actually have the life that we have today. So let's talk about some of the reasons why this happens. First, we inherited a version of faith built around programs, not people. So for decades, spiritual growth in the church has been centered around meetings and ministries, Sunday services, midweek studies, committees, volunteer teams, right? These were beautiful, impactful structures in their time, but they were also created during eras when women's schedules looked vastly different than they do now. The assumption became, if you're not participating in the structure, you're not growing spiritually. But you know what? That's not biblical. That's just structural. In the modern woman, as a professional, an entrepreneur, a leader, a mother, a caretaker, or all of the above, often doesn't fit inside of those structures anymore. Yet the pressure remains. Second, we're taught that faithfulness equals availability. Somewhere along the way, faithfulness became tied to how available you were for those church-sponsored activities. If you showed up, served regularly, participated consistently, attended studies, then you were committed. But that equates spiritual maturity with your free time. And that's not how Jesus actually measured devotion. Jesus didn't applaud women who were the most involved. He honored the ones who actually sought him through her real life, her real story, her real offering. Yet many women still carry the weight of, if I'm not showing up physically, then I must be letting God down in some way. And this creates guilt, a guilt that you were never meant to carry. It's not for you. Another reason, third, is we confuse traditions of women before us with what God's actual expectations are. Many of those faith patterns that we inherited, they came from our mothers or our grandmothers, mentors we've had, that older church culture, women's ministry norms, Bible study programs that were just a one-size-fits-all. Now, these women were faithful, but their life rhythm was not your life rhythm. They weren't navigating digital businesses, remote teams, 24/7 communication, leadership roles, demanding workplaces, and the emotional load of modern life. Yet, we assume we must match their faith expression exactly, even if our lives look nothing like theirs. But God's not asking you to live someone else's season. He's asking you to live with him in your season. Fourth, we learned a version of spiritual growth that rewards performance. So let's be truly honest here. A woman who looks busy in her faith life is viewed as spiritually strong. And a woman who lives that quieter, more personal rhythm and practices can be labeled as spiritually weak. We often link performance to maturity, or activity to devotion, or involvement to impact, availability to faithfulness. But that's not how God sees you. What is he looking at? He's looking at your desire, your dependence on him, your obedience, your relationship connecting to him, your surrender to him, and actually the posture of your heart. Most women aren't spiritually exhausted because they're failing to do something. They're exhausted because they're failing to perform in the way they think they should be performing. They're performing for God. They're performing for others. They're performing to meet some expectations that God never set. Fifth, we fear being judged as less spiritual if we step outside this mold. This might actually be the deepest layer. Even if you know that these traditional routines don't fit your season of life or your design, you still stay in them because you're afraid of looking inconsistent, of being misunderstood, disappointing someone, or appearing less devoted, maybe even losing your place, or being labeled as just spiritually dry. So what do? You push through, not because it's life-giving to you, but because you're afraid that you'll be seen as less faithful. And here is the truth I want to tell you. When the mold becomes more important than the relationship, the mold has become an idol. I'm going to say that again. When the mold becomes more important than the relationship, the mold has become an idol. And that's not you who's out of alignment. That's not you. It's the expectation. Do you know why? Do you know why you don't fit the mold? Because God designed you differently. By the time most Christian women reach their adulthood, with careers, their leadership roles, their emotional responsibilities, with families, with callings, They've already spent years trying to force themselves into this mold shaped by this tradition rather than design. But here's what can change everything. You're not spiritually exhausted because you're undisciplined, because you keep trying and trying and trying. You're exhausted because you are mismatched. That's an important word. You're trying to grow in ways that don't align with how God crafted your heart, soul, mind, and strength. The traditional mold, it assumes that everyone connects with God in the same way. And so for decades, faith has been taught like some kind of universal formula. You attend, you participate, you study, you serve, repeat. Attend, participate, study, serve, repeat, right? The message, whether it was spoken or unspoken, was this is what mature women do. This is how you grow spiritually. This is how you show devotion. But God never created people with identical spiritual wiring. He never expected your relationship with Him to look like anyone else's. He designed you individually. And individuality requires personalized connection. So, what is this? I talked about it before. It is the primary leading that shapes your pathway to God. Every woman naturally connects with God through one of the HSMS leadings: heart, soul, mind, strength. The heart connection is that emotional connection. You feel God's presence most deeply through relational closeness, prayerful empathy, and worship that really does touch your heart. Soul is that creative reflection. You connect through meaning making, imagery, symbolism, beauty, and the inner world of reflection. If you lean towards more of the mind, that's that insight and understanding. So you connect through the structure and the study and the logic and the truth and the learning that deepens your grasp of God's character. If you're a strength person, if that's where you lean first, that primary leading, it's through action and embodiment. You connect through that doing, movement and service, embodied prayer, active expressions of faith. But that traditional mold, it actually only honors one or two of these ways. And the rest, well, they're rarely ever taught, rarely ever affirmed, even rarely acknowledged. So if your leading falls outside of this mold, you feel like something must be wrong with you. But nothing's wrong with you. I want to assure you. Your leading simply doesn't match the method that you were given. So I want to encourage you to take my Faith Shape quiz, if you haven't already, to see where your primary leading falls in the HSMS model. You can see it down in the description, and you'll be able to click on that and let me know where you fall. Because forced faith, that's where it always leads to exhaustion. It's not your commitment. It's not that your commitment's low. It's your compatibility with the method is low. And here's what happens when you force yourself into the wrong mold. Your energy dips, your motivation fades, joy just disappears, your consistency crumbles, your guilt, it grows, and your spiritual life, it feels heavy instead of hopeful, which is what we have in Christ, hope. And so then if that's happening to you, this is what you conclude. Well, I must be failing spiritually. Truth is, faith doesn't fail. Methods fail. That mold fails. The routines of others fail. The systems that have been set up fail. But God's design for you never fails. When the method is mismatched to the woman suffers. When the method is actually matched to the woman, then the woman flourishes. God designed you to grow with Him, not fit into a system. So Jesus never called His disciples to a program. He called them to Himself. He didn't hand them out a checklist and say, Here's what you need to do. He didn't give them some standardized routine, A, B, C, D. He didn't create a mold that said, you have to fit exactly into this. Each disciple connected with him differently. Each one he met uniquely. He discipled them in ways that matched their design, exactly what they needed. And if he didn't standardize them, why would he ask us to standardize ourselves, for him to standardize you? Your spiritual exhaustion is not failure. It's actually a signal, kind of what I call a holy nudge. And it's actually an invitation to step out of that mold and into a rhythm, the rhythm that God created just for you. When you spend years trying to fit into this spiritual mold that doesn't match your design, the impact is real. It touches your emotions, it touches your energy, your confidence, and even your view of God. Most women, well, they'll never say this out loud, but they probably feel it deep inside, because spiritual exhaustion doesn't come from a lack of faith. It comes from trying to grow in ways that don't match the way God created you to be. And here's kind of what that looks like in real life. One, you start feeling guilty for not doing enough, right? Even if you love God wholeheartedly, the mold tells you you should be at more events and should be serving more and should be joining studies and should be more consistent. The guilt just grows exponentially, not because you are far away from God, but because you're far from the expectations. Number two, you mistake incompatibility for immaturity. When your routine doesn't work for you anymore, you assume, well, I must be just spiritually weak. I'm immature. Other women can do this. Why can't I? Start comparing. What's wrong with me? Oh, biggest lie of the enemy. But nothing is wrong. You're simply using tools built for someone else's design. Your spiritual exhaustion isn't condemnation. It's clarity. It's God revealing that the mold was never meant to define you. And when God reveals the misalignment, he also provides a pathway. And that's where the personalized faith plan comes in. Truth, you're never meant to build your spiritual life around somebody else's expectations. You're meant to build it around the way God intentionally crafted you, your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that's exactly why I created the personalized faith plan. Instead of forcing you back into that mold, the PFP actually helps you to discover your God-shaped design through that HSMS leading. Take that faith-shaped quiz. Understand why certain spiritual practices drain you while others seem to revive you. Create rhythms and practices that fit your real schedule and the actual capacity that you have right now. And to connect with God in ways that feel meaningful and not just mechanical, like checking off that list. And to grow in a way that aligns with how Jesus wired you, not how culture told you to perform. The PFP isn't about more discipline. It's about more alignment. It's actual roadmap that helps you step into the faith rhythm, the faith practices that God wanted for you all along. Ones that deepen your relationship with him without that guilt, without that pressure, and without the burnout. This is your invitation to stop squeezing yourself into this outdated mold and to finally grow in a way that God uniquely designed you to flourish. If you're feeling spiritually exhausted, if you're tired of trying to be the good Christian woman that mold expects, if you're craving a way to grow your faith that fits your actual life, the season that you're in, and your God-given design, then I want to invite you to something very special. I have an upcoming virtual workshop. It's called Discover Your God-given faith shape, create rhythms and practices that fit your life, and step into your mission with confidence. It's going to be on January 19th. coming up soon, and registration is going to close before that. This powerful event is really going to help you understand all these traditional faith routines and why they don't work or stopped working for you. We're going to discover your HSMS leading and how God designed you to grow, again, without the guilt, the pressure, the comparison. We're going to release all of that. We're going to learn rhythms and practices that work for your real life, not against it. We're going to build some practices that deepen your relationship with God. And we're going to so you can step into your work and your calling with renewed confidence. And you'll see exactly how the PFP, the Personalized Faith Plan, can guide your spiritual growth through 2026. If you're ready to step out of this mold and have real freedom in Christ, the way He designed you, this is your moment. I'm going to say, register now. Go down to the description and register now. Let me know in the comments also, which part of the traditional faith mold has been the hardest for you to fit into? And what do you wish your spiritual life looked like, felt like, instead of where you are right now? Let me know in the comments. Would love to chat with you. And do sign up for this great workshop that's coming up. This is Deneen TV. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, be filled to overflowing.